Ancient Egyptians are one of the most fascinating civilizations of all time. Their mastery of architecture and medicine, and their intricate royal system has made them a subject of great interest. The fact that they claim to use magic in their customs also makes them a lot more interesting. If you want to find out 10 secrets of ancient Egypt, keep watching. 10. Equal rights. Maybe one of the reasons ancient Egypt was so wildly successful was that the men and women had equal rights, even in the eyes of the law. This was highly progressive at the time. Women were able to own, earn, buy, sell, and inherit property. They could also raise children on their own. And they were also punished by law and were able to bring cases to justice, make wills, serve on juries, and enter legal contracts. Typically speaking, Egyptian women didn't traditionally work outside the home, but they could, and they received equal pay. Take ancient Greece for comparison, in which women were owned by their husbands. Ancient Egypt, women could divorce and remarry as they wished. Number 9. The truth about pharaohs. The ancient temples often paint a pretty and imposing picture of the ancient pharaohs, but the truth may be a lot farther from those intimidating statures. This is mostly because a pharaoh's diet consisted of things like wine, bread, honey, and beer. So those ancient royal waistlines were beyond affected. When those mummies were studied, it was revealed that a lot of rules were overweight and pretty unhealthy, and some even had diabetes. Among them is Queen Hatshepsut, who historians believe was actually obese. Number 8. Hieroglyphs. Bet you didn't know this ancient Egyptian secret. Ancient Egypt and the pharaohs are always synonymous with their written language, the hieroglyphic symbols. But did you know that hieroglyphs were actually rarely used by scribes, and that only about 10% of the population was literate in general? The hieroglyphs, which was a script that consists of hundreds of elaborate and intricate pictures, were incredibly time-consuming to create, so the ancient Egyptians didn't teach them to everyone, and the script was reserved for only the most important of texts, the one that would decorate tomb and temple walls, as well as a text describing and recording royal events and achievements. So what did the average Egyptian scribe use? A simplified form of hieroglyphic writing called hieratic. Number 7. Egyptian texts reveal the story of Jesus' crucifixion. Whether this has any truth to it or not, we'll probably never know. Everyone knows the story of the crucifixion of Jesus. Well, the ancient Egyptians have a similar story, but with major plot twists. This story was revealed when a 1,200-year-old text was deciphered. First of all, the text says that the day Jesus was arrested occurred on a Tuesday evening instead of a Thursday, which basically throws off the entire Easter timeline. But whatever. The text also reveals a final dinner, besides the one that the world knows. This final dinner took place between Jesus and Judge Pilate. Pilate prepared a table and ate on the 5th day of the week, and Jesus blessed Pilate and his whole house. Pilate would also later tell Jesus, "Well, when behold, the night has come, rise and withdraw, and when the morning comes and they accuse me because of you, I shall give them the only son I have, so they can kill him in your place." Jesus replied that he could escape if he wanted to, and, here comes the plot twist, he revealed he could shapeshift and turn incorporeal. Number 6. The Forgotten Queen. One of ancient Egypt's most well-kept and forgotten secrets is Queen Hatshepsut, whose entire story will send shivers down your spine. Hatshepsut rose to claim the throne of Egypt in 1478 BC using her bloodline, education, and religion. She was able to have one of the most successful reigns in history. The country thrived under her rule. However, during her successor Thutmose III and his son reigns, all traces of her were nearly wiped from existence. Literally, they scraped her name off from historical and pharaonic records, as well as chiseled off her images from the stone walls. The truth about Hatshepsut was not revealed until early 1900, if you can believe it, when archaeologists went into the Deir el-Bahari temples and started to see that the texts made no sense. When Hatshepsut's empty sarcophagus, which was one of 3 she had prepared for herself, was discovered, the truth about the third woman to become pharaoh in 3,000 years in ancient Egyptian was revealed. Cleopatra would come to rule in the same way, some 14 centuries later. Hatshepsut's mummy was only discovered in 2007. It's believed Thutmose III tried to wipe all records of her because he couldn't handle her legacy. Number 5. Cannibalism in ancient Egypt. As far as ancient civilizations go, ancient Egypt wasn't that big on cannibalism, but there was some talk of it. Utterances 273-274 of the pyramid text, which is called the Cannibal Hymn, describes a grimmer truth than what most people believe. The text described the Pharaohs as a god who cannibalizes the gods. This god was someone who lives on his fathers and feeds on his mothers, who lives on the being of every god, who eats their entrails. Pharaoh is he who eats men and lives on gods. The bloodthirsty text talks about ritualistic cannibalism and human sacrifices to the gods, and rulers gaining the magical powers of the gods through human sacrifice. But other than that, that's all the mention to official cannibalism. That said, there's a theory that cannibalism may have been a last resort in ancient Egypt during times of droughts and famine. During the first intermediate period, Egypt experienced famines, dust storms, a plague, and major political strife. In 1119 to 1200 AD, a scholar from Baghdad called Abdel Latif al-Baghdadi said people used to habitually eat human flesh, with parents even eating their own children. Robberies and assassinations were unpunished, and graves were ransacked for food. Number 4. Magic of medicine. Ancient Egyptians nearly had this medicine thing down, to the point that surrounding empires called for Egyptian doctors to treat their illnesses. So how did this brilliant civilization come to have such an unprecedented mastery over medicine? Well, according to them, magic is effective together with medicine, and medicine is effective together with magic. Ancient Egyptians had to deal with a lot of injuries. Their monumental building projects aside, animals such as lions, hippos, and jackals were prone to attacks. They didn't have a concept of bacteria or germs, but the Egyptians were able to treat wounds with splints, casts, and bandages, just as we do. They also knew that the heart was a pump, and they recognized that veins and arteries supplied blood to the body. They knew of liver disease, but not the liver's function. A major flaw in their understanding of human anatomy, the brain was thought to be a useless organ, and that all feelings and thoughts came from the heart. They also used supernatural rituals alongside the actual treatments. Number 3. They used to play board games. Before we pick up the heat for the last 2 secrets, let's wind down with this fun little fact. Did you know that after a long day of work along the Nile River or coming back from a shift building the pyramid, Egyptians entertained themselves by playing board games? Those included games like Mehen and Dogs and Jackals. The most popular game dates back as far as 3500 BC and is called Senet. The game consists of a long board which is painted with 30 squares, and each player had pieces that moved along the board according to dice or throwing sticks. There are actually paintings of Queen Nefertari playing this Senet, and pharaohs like Tutankhamun have game boards buried with them in his tomb. Number 2. Incest. At number 2, we're bringing you the inside gossip of the ancient royal families. For the common classes overall, incest and marrying within the family were virtually unheard of. But among the royals, it was the norm. They believed that since gods married each other, so should the ruling families. And bonus, if the royals married within the family, they could share their privileges, riches, and power with only their relatives, keeping the wealth within the family. So incest protected the royal assets. A perfect example of incest within the ancient Egyptian royal families is King Tutankhamun, the boy king who was handed the throne at the age of 9. Tut's parents were siblings, which resulted in several genetic defects. Tut would later marry his sister or half-sister, and he suffered from several diseases and defects, including one that had him dependent on crutches. 2 of his offspring also had lethal genetic defects, as 2 mummified fetuses were found. Number 1. The Great Pyramid's True Origins. We saved the best for last. For our final and number 1 ancient Egypt secret, we have the true origins of the Great Pyramid. There's a lot of misconceptions and myths surrounding the build of the massive and staggeringly tall Great Pyramid that belongs to King Khufu. The most popular and believed theory is that the pyramid was built by slaves. It was not. In fact, those workers who worked for over 20 years to build this architectural marvel lived the best lives that they could at the time. So it wasn't slaves that were forced to work in grueling conditions like classic historian Herodotus believed. Instead of the 100,000 slaves of men, women, and children he depicted, the truth was more like 5,000 permanent salaried workers, as well as 20,000 temporary workers. These workers were also recruited as part of the Corvée system of national service to put in a 3 or 4 month shift on building before they were allowed to go home. Those workers were provided comfortable housing in a camp near the pyramid, and they received plenty of food, drink, medical attention, and those who unfortunately died on duty they received the honor of being buried in a nearby cemetery. And that's all for the ancient secrets we have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. And before you go, if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to Weeklypedia and click that notification bell to be alerted whenever we upload a new video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.